Hello, it's Calendar Report here. It's for the second video from our Digital Minimalism Book Club. I am coming at you live from, well, not actually live, but coming at you from Hollywood, California. I'm here as part of the second leg of my book tour. The Hollywood sign is just that direction. You can see it through the window. So I'm here talking about digital minimalism. I was just spending time with Rich Roll earlier today. Tomorrow I get to spend time with The Minimalist and Lewis Howes and Tom Bilyeu. Then I'm going up to San Francisco. We're going to do some events up there. So a lot of exciting things going on, and I thought this would be a good time to step back and answer some of your questions. And so I have some here, and I thought we'd jump right into it. All right, so number one, I have 4 young children, aged 3 to 10, and they have a fascination with distractive technologies, often due to social peer exposure to them. What advice would you provide to parents of school-aged children on how to teach them about digital minimalism or deep work? Well, I actually just wrote a blog post about this not long ago called Digital Minimalism for Parents. In this blog post, I talked about some of the things I've been learning on the road from parents of kids who are old enough that this type of conversation is relevant. I, of course, have 3 kids, but the oldest of my kids is only 6, so this is not super relevant yet, but I've been listening pretty intensely to parents who have slightly older kids and hearing what they think works and what's not working. And something that seems to be really clear is that modeling is important. So what the kids see you doing at home can be more influential than the rules you set or the restrictions you give them or the lectures you deliver. So one of the ideas, for example, that I talk about in that post that came up from these conversations with parents is what was called the phone foyer method, which is where at home in evening after work, you keep your phone, let's say, in the foyer near your front door. The ringer can be on, so if someone calls, you can hear it, and you can go answer it. If you need to look something up, you can go to the foyer, and you can look something up. If maybe there's some text messages that are coming through that you're expecting, you can go in there and occasionally check, but that's where you use the phone when you're at home. Alternatively, I know some people keep it in the bedroom during the earlier evening hours. So they leave, in other words, they leave where people are when they need to use the phone. They don't have it with them going about the normal family life in the evening, right? So what this forces you to do is basically approach your evening around your family in such a way that the phone is not a constant companion. You're showing them that the constant companion model of the phone, that's just something that's kind of there and you look at it all the time, you're showing them that that's not necessarily fundamental. And if they see that you don't do that, you are modeling to them through this idea that this could be more of a tool as opposed to something that they constantly need to be using. So there are a lot of complicated factors when it comes to parenting and digital minimalism and digital tools, but modeling a healthy way of using the tools goes a long way. So that's something I would suggest keeping in mind. Another question. The digital declutter made me more aware of feeling the constant pressure to upgrade to the latest hardware. iPhone, iPad, MacBook, because of needing to keep up with the latest and greatest technology and not be somehow limited from doing anything new. During my declutter, I chose to make some different choices to repair, upgrade an existing device versus buying a new one. Did anyone else during the study or research period comment on this facet or aspect in the declutter process as it relates to hardware or devices? It is an interesting point, and it's something that I've heard and noticed, that when you're in more of a minimalist mode, where there's things you care about and you deploy technology to go after these things you care about, the idea that you need to keep upgrading is not as urgent. I mean, if a device stops working, you might stop back and say, okay, what do I need to do here? Should I buy a new one? Should I upgrade it? Maybe if you are seeing that there's real performance issues with something, you might ask, how do I fix this? But what you don't feel when you're in a pure minimalist mindset is this urge to upgrade or buy new just for the sake of upgrading or buying new. Because if you're a minimalist, it's all instrumental. These tools are something that you use for these things that you really care about. They help these things you really care about, but the whole storyline is these things that you really care about. On the other hand, if you're more of using these devices as just a distraction or to fill the void, then you get some benefit out of just upgrading them. It's something to do, it's something new, it's something shiny. It's a sort of classic maximalist mindset. So this is common. I think as people become more instrumental about their digital tools, put them to use for things that they really care about as opposed to using them as a means or a value in themselves, the urge to constantly upgrade or buy new things really does diminish. I'm a good case of this. I had years ago my phone broke, so I brought on my wife's phone. She gave me her old phone that worked until just recently, when finally it stopped actually responding to me touching it, and also it would click on its own. So I could have it in my pocket on an Uber ride, and it would change the destination with none of my hands involved. So that was kind of a problem. So we finally had to get a new one, and all I basically said was like, what's the smallest, cheapest new iPhone I can get, right? Because to me, this is a very instrumental thing. I do a few things with. That's all I care about. And so I think you'll find that that's pretty common. The upgrade cycle really diminishes when you have this instrumental relationship with your tools. Another question: how do you deal with checking email on the phone? Do you have strict rules against checking email on your phone, or is it something that doesn't really bother you? About 6 months ago, I accidentally deleted the Gmail app on my phone. I think, again, I don't know, I guess I don't always turn off the lock to phone screen I put in my pocket. I think it accidentally deleted itself. And it was great. I thought I was using it too much. There was certainly some inconveniences, and I found it was worth it. That trade-off was worth it. So there's a couple cases where, it would be really useful if I could get on my email right now. But not having that as an option, I'm a little bit bored, let me check this, what's going on, I'm worried, was actually a really huge boon. So now I recommend that. If it's at all possible to deconfigure the email app or take Gmail, if you use Gmail, off of your phone, I would suggest doing it. Not having that option there can go a long way. Another question: you've talked about getting dumb phones before, so I was wondering if buying a dumb phone would be a clever tactic or propagate the problem with phones. Okay, and so earlier in this question, my interlocutor here was talking about situations like going to the gym where she felt like she had to have the phone with her because what if there was an emergency or something like that, and was starting to wonder if, like, well, maybe I could use a dumb phone for those purposes. I think that's a really good idea. The notion of a phone as a constant companion is something, as I've talked about before, is relatively recent, and it has a lot of issues in terms of breaking up solitude. And so if you can get away from this idea of the phone as a constant companion, there are a lot of benefits. And so having a sort of emergency device, so something you can use if there really is a problem, your car completely breaks down or something like this, or you get completely lost, this idea that you have something you can use as an emergency could give you some peace of mind and help you move back towards this model that we had about 10 years ago and before, which is you don't always necessarily have a phone with you. There's a lot of benefits to that. See here. How do you overcome energy slumps or low motivation for the work you have to do? Energy slumps, low motivation can have a lot of different causes, so it's worth trying to tease apart what's actually happening. Sometimes it's just health or sickness, like you're sick, or you didn't get a lot of sleep. In that case, if possible, okay, you have to dial back a little bit. You want to get your energy back up again. And there's only so much you can do if you're literally low energy. Another interesting cause of the sort of low motivation for your work is that there's some part of your mind that's not really convinced that this thing that we're working on is really what we should be working on, or there's some part of your mind that's not convinced that the plan you have for working on what you're working on is really a smart plan. Okay, so this is a case where you need to step back and say, am I really working on the right things? Am I really attacking these things in a way that I think makes a lot of sense? That type of reflection can go a long way. When you know something's important, you know the right way to tackle it, it's a lot easier to sort of burst through and keep pushing through to keep motivation. And some work is just hard and you don't want to do it and you have to do it, and that's rough. And the best you can do is do your time blocks, figure out when you're going to work on it, see how that fits into your day, see that you have some relief coming up, and you have to just grit your teeth and execute. So it's helpful to understand the different reasons why you might be feeling that low energy. Can you talk a bit more about how you handle texting? It's becoming increasingly difficult for me to communicate with my family. I guess because I'm paraphrasing here, they use texting more and more. But then again, I dread having to scroll through cat memes and jaws, I don't know what that is, and emojis and torrents of everybody's endless vacation and puppy and baby pictures. I think it's fine to use text messaging. I think it's a pretty convenient tool in some circumstances. I think it's also true that some people use it all the time and often have an expectation that, hey, if they text, it's like they're in the room with you talking and they're going to get a response right away. And the best thing you can do there is you essentially just train people what to expect, which is you don't always have your phone with you and you don't always respond to text instantly. And eventually they learn, okay, you're not someone that I can expect to hear back from right away. And they stop trying to do that. They stop saying, hey, what about this right now, or blah, blah, blah. But you can still use text messaging where it's useful. So to me, texting is all about expectations. And so you just train the people around you. It's not about you, it's me. I often don't have my phone. I don't have it with me when I'm working. It's in do not disturb mode. There's just no expectation that I'm necessarily going to see a text when it comes in. That's about you and how you work, not necessarily insulting to them. And in my experience, sometimes it annoys people, but they basically adjust to it, and it's much better for you. How and when did you come to read Sir Andrew Lee's The Intellectual Life? The Intellectual Life, yes, I write about this book in deep work. It's a Thomastic scholar, wrote this book, I believe, in the 1920s, and I really liked his account, his careful account of concentrating, and what it feels like to concentrate and how important it is. I don't know where I first heard about that book. It's a good question. Now, I mean, I teach at a Jesuit Catholic university, so what I do remember is that when I went to find it in our library at Georgetown, they had many copies. And I don't remember where I first heard about it, but I do remember reading it. It was springtime. I was reading it outside on the Georgetown campus. I remember the copy that I had at the time. It's a great book. Now, not everyone wants to become a sort of theologian, which is sort of essentially what this book is teaching you how to do. But what I like about it is that it takes seriously cognition, right? So this book takes seriously cognition and how do you actually use your mind to think and produce value. And so this was a theologian, a Thomastic scholar who's thinking about these things. I don't think we take those issues seriously enough in other types of context where creating value with your brain is really important, like most of knowledge work. We don't think enough about how should we think, how to produce value with our mind, and instead we just think about what's convenient, what's flexible. We sit there and email and do text messaging and Slack messaging and emails all day because it makes everyone's life easier. But we don't have enough people sitting down and saying, okay, how do you use your brain? How do you produce value? And so I wish there was more books like that. Deep Work was certainly inspired by what this book was doing. I wish more people would think about thinking in this type of systematic way. How would you recommend a digital minimalist tackle feelings of burnout? In Chapter 6, you mentioned building and fixing something every week and joining an organization as high-quality leisure activities. But I'm currently attending an out-of-state coding boot camp. They'll be wrapping up soon, making those activities difficult for the time being. Any stopgap measures? Have small things you could bring with you when you're on the road. So having some sort of structure, like a book you're working on, maybe you have a pedometer and like you're tracking steps or some sort of exercise routine you use. When you're in a new city, you take the free time you have and there's certain things you want to see or certain places you want to try to get to or tourist type places that you want to see. There's a lot you can do even if it's small scale, but just having some intention in your activities can go a long way even when on the road. What you recommend to people who work as a coach speaker who are happy for every new customer they get? Blah, blah, paraphrasing here. Facebook and Instagram could be a type of free advertising because people can see you talking about coaching and speaking. Would you recommend people like me, you really want to give up social media, but sometimes get customers through these devices? Well, the general idea that businesses can make productive use of social media is something that I completely agree with. There's a reason why I like to say that Facebook is worth $500 billion, for example. It's a very effective advertising medium. So if you have a professional reason to use social media, that's not necessarily sort of an irrational or bad thing. All that I recommend is two things. One, really understand it. Really understand what is the professional value I think I'm getting out of social media. Try to isolate what is the behavior that is really valuable. Try to optimize that. Spend some time thinking about it. Don't just go off of a vague sense of like, I should just be on here doing things and that will somehow alchemize into business, which happens a lot. So get serious about understanding how the medium works. And then two, don't do it on your phone. So if you are using social media in some sort of way that's good for your business, don't let that be an excuse to constantly be looking at your screen. Do it on a desktop, do it like a professional. Have a schedule, have a system, know how you use it. It's something that, like clockwork, on these nights I log on, I do these things, right? You got to treat it like a tool. What you want to avoid is allowing the general sense that social media could help your business as being the gateway through which it can actually sort of take over your whole life well beyond where it's useful to your business. Finally, when you're eating alone, how long of a lunch break do you block out every day? I find it hard to know what's too long of a break and what's too short. Putting aside the time required to get the food, so I don't know if like you leave the office and go to like a food truck or something like this, but in terms of like when you're actually sitting down and eating by yourself, I usually do 15 or 20 minutes. My typical thing if I'm eating by myself during the workday is when I catch up on the baseball news for the Washington Nationals. That's kind of my routine. I eat and I catch up on sort of the latest articles, like right now, like what's happening in spring training or during the season, some of the deeper look into the team. So specific question, specific answer. Don't think it's universally right, but that's what I happen to do. Okay, everyone, thanks for those questions. Keep them coming to Digital Minimalism at penguinrandomhouse.com. We've got 2 more of these videos. I'm having a fun time reading these questions. I have a bunch more. Please send more in. And once I get back from sunny California to the East Coast, I'll record another video and get that right up.